I wonder if you could extrapolate the idea that matter is always a reflection of an inner experience to the structure of society, political discord, fractions in, social bonds. Can we take it not only to the Milky Way and the existence of the stars, but actually to the structure of what we're seeing in society and interpolitics, in international politics?
The first thing to notice is that a direct implication of this notion that matter is always, in all cases, the extrinsic appearance of subjective states is that the world now is of the same kind as us. We are no longer this rare accidents in which a world that is fundamentally unconscious temporarily became conscious. Behind everything you see around you, there is something of the same nature as you. So now you belonging here. You're not an accident, a temporary epiphenomenal aberration. The world now is of the same nature as you. You have an inner life. So has the world. That's the first thing. Now, the next thing to understand is that what we identify with, and that's your point earlier, what we tend to identify with is a particular narrative of self. Could say, well, I am Bernardo, I am a philosopher, I live with Claudia, I also happen to do computer stuff, and I love to watch The Big Bang Theory, and I go to work at the high-tech campus, and this whole narrative of self, and we say, it's me. But if we follow this narrative over time, we realize that we are changing all the time. My 5-year-old self had different thoughts, different opinions, different perspectives, a completely different body. There isn't a single body, a single atom in the body of that 5-year-old that has stayed in my body until today. Many have left and returned. There are atoms that were once in the lungs of Napoleon, in my lungs, at some point in my life, but it has never stayed static. Everything about that 5-year-old has changed. And yet, I have the clear sense that I was him, even though everything else changed. Now, you can extrapolate very easily now, and you can easily imagine that by the same token that you believe you were your 5-year-old self, on the same logical grounds, you must then believe that you are me. I am like your 5-year-old self. I'm completely different from you, but the core subjectivity in me is identical to the core subjectivity in you. If we were to both be in a perfect sensory deprivation chamber and become completely amnesic for 30 seconds, during those 30 seconds, you and I would be completely identical. Not two identical units of the same model, but effectively the same model, because you cannot talk about spatial or temporal distinctions in a state of complete mental emptiness. Not only is there subjective inner life behind everything you see around you, now you can even identify with everything else and everybody else, because distinctions are as significant to identity, distinctions between people are as significant to identity as the distinctions between you and your 5-year-old self. Those distinctions don't stop you from saying, I was my 5-year-old self. So if you are to be logically consistent and rigorous in this line of thought, you must also acknowledge, I may just as well be Jonathan.
I know that philosophers don't get to decide world politics, but this is one of the best and most compelling arguments for an understanding across political divides of our shared humanity on this planet. Meaning, this is potentially the most love-filled perspective on our existence, which would then lead you to say, what is a border, right? Who are those people versus these people? And, I don't think it has to be a political conversation because it's a consciousness conversation. And, there's this mystical concept that in order for us to live on this planet, we have to be able to block out a certain amount of pain and suffering so that we can just walk around, go to the bathroom, raise children. That if we were awakened to the true suffering, right, that exists as the human condition, no one would be able to exist, right? So the notion is that being human is about this balance of being able to say, where do I end? Where do you begin? And is there a way to introduce that into a conversation about belonging and justice, right?
Absolutely. Look, I don't think these notions, these philosophical ideas, mean that we should all hold hands and sing the kumbaya. I tend not to be a romantic philosopher, and I'll tell you why. If I could go back in time and watch my 10-year-old self throwing a fit and being nasty and destructive, I wouldn't go to him and say, "Come here, my darling, give me a hug." No, I would say, "This is not fine." And you would set boundaries, and you would set a stake on the ground and say, "Until here and no more." Even though it is your 10-year-old self, you would still do that. So I think it's perfectly valid for there to be disagreement, for there to be robust discussions. It's perfectly valid for there to be criticism. There is nothing in me that cannot criticize what's going on in Ukraine and Gaza right now. There is no way I'm going to hold hands with certain people involved and sing the kumbaya. But what it also means, ultimately, this philosophical idea, is the recognition that what is behind their eyes is what is behind your eyes. So there is a chance for reconciliation. It is not romantic reconciliation of singing the kumbaya and giving 3 kisses. It's a more mature, sober reconciliation. It's the notion that there isn't a fundamental chasm that cannot be crossed. No, these chasms do not exist. You can always